Hello again, everyone. I think we'll start this discussion on fintech. Again, my name is Anam, and I am the product lead at Chuktu and a co-founding member of Product Soch. Really excited to be here and hearing this fintech panel. We have amazing panelists. I'll just go around and introduce each and every one of them. And I'll just request all the panelists to wave at the camera so that audience can connect with you. So we have all the panelists with us. First of all, I'll go ahead and introduce Nagappan Ramasamy. Nagappan is a senior product manager at Razorpay. He has more than 8 years of experience and is a product enthusiast. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nagappan. Next, we have Hasib Siddiqui. Hasib is the co-founding member of Dastagir and also the head of product at Dastagir. Dastagir is a B2B commerce marketplace that connects retailers with the wholesalers. Glad to have you on the panel, Hasib. Moving forward, we have a very great profile from India. I think a lot of people know her, Monica Jasuja. She has over 20 years of experience in building financial innovation digital products. Currently, she is the vice president at Comviva and also leading their fintech solutions division. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today. Moving forward, we have Monis Rahman from Pakistan. I think he needs no introduction. He is an entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and businessman. Is the chairman, CEO, and founder of Naseeb Networks, Dukaan, and Finja. Dukaan is serving 5 million small, medium enterprises in Pakistan, and Finja provides them credit to grow. Thank you so much for taking out the time to join us, sir. Last but not the least, someone who has personally inspired me a lot, Noreen Hayat. She is the co-founder of Tejas Financial Services. Tejas caters to underbanked and underserved Pakistanis for their short-term financial services. Thank you so much, Noreen. Glad to have you on the panel. So this is our panel for the day, and I'll jump right in to the discussion. So for the fintech, we know that fintech globally is a very growing field, right? And it's very nascent in Pakistan right now, and we have a couple of challenges. But with the new initiatives like fintech associations, it's jumpstarting in Pakistan right now. On the other hand, fintech is the world's fastest growing platform in India. They have a lot of funding. It's valued at $31 billion right now, and it's expected to go to $84 billion by 2025. So I would like to start the discussion by seeing the challenges that Pakistan is facing and maybe moving on to see how India has catered to those challenges and led into the growth phase. So maybe let's start with you, Noreen. Tejas targets underbanked and underserved Pakistanis. What are some of the challenges for penetrating into these market segments?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is an absolutely amazing platform and a lot to learn from you guys across the border. And I'm rightly pointed out, I think we are still at a very nascent stage when it comes to building the ecosystem. We've just started to lay the building blocks for the ecosystem. And yes, there seems to be a lot of activity happening right now, but there are a lot of moving pieces that we need to address. And I think the regulator over here has been very supportive, but that again is just, that's literally scratching the surface right now. With these, we've been working on serving the and the underbanked. So we work as a neobank model, and credit nano loans is the first product that we went into the market with. But this is literally the beginning of an entire slate of financial services, which includes savings, insurance, and ultimately investments as well. So I think the challenge is, I think there's a edge challenge state over here. One is the customer side. Definitely a lot needs to be done on onboarding of the customer in terms of literacy, awareness, and of course addressing their needs to begin with. And I think right now there are lots of products in the market, but we need to do a lot of work on having the right product design for these customers, because we've seen with banks at least, the product journeys have been antiquated for the longest time. And I think fintechs are really trying to break that with the new age products that are coming into the market. The second, I would say, the incumbents themselves in the market. I think the mindset shift is it's integral to actually bring about this change, because right now the stage that we are in the ecosystem, fintechs alone or the incumbents alone can't really bring the wave that's needed. Yes, maybe we can bring in some ripples, but we really need waves to come into this market. And for that, we do see some partnerships already happening between the fintech players and the incumbents. And that mindset shift has to happen. And I think third, but the most important is really the ecosystem in terms of the regulators or an enabling environment for this ecosystem to flourish. So, whether we talk about, data, I think now discussions are happening around open banking in Pakistan, and still very, very nascent. We haven't really gotten there. But, that's integral, and we need to really have a proper structure around open banking. Then, we need to see how digital onboarding of customers can be done. Then there's another, side of merchants of how can they be onboarded in a more seamless manner. The credit bureau itself. So, there are many, many moving pieces here that we're really right now beginning to look into, but we haven't really gotten there where, we see in the Indian ecosystem already evolved. And I think this is the early days of the Indian fintech ecosystem, and you guys probably started many years back. And, we happen to be there now. So yeah, lots to be done, lots of challenges, but, we're taking these on as opportunities. So let's hope we get there faster.
Rightly said, Noreen. Thank you so much. I think I'll move on to Monica. If you can talk about how India is the fastest growing and how they have overcome some of these challenges and what's there for us to learn from the journey.
Thank you so much first of all, for the opportunity and wonderful forum. I think India in the last 7 to 8 years, I would say probably the decade, has made more progress than anywhere else in the world. At the back of a couple of things that have happened really well in the Indian market. First of all, like the US is very, very market driven. EU is very regulatory driven. India seems to be very government driven. Government is the biggest disruptor in the Indian fintech ecosystem. And I think every fintech will acknowledge the work done by the Indian government over the last, I would say, 10 to 12 years. And this has been acknowledged overall globally as well. But I think in the current decade, what has happened is that somebody obviously had the foresight and vision to connect basic ecosystems together. And that has right now been materialized or formalized with a JAM Trinity, as we call it. It's called J, stands for Jan Dhan, which is a bank account for all. A stands for Aadhaar, which is our social identification. And M stands for a mobile. Now, imagine this particular ecosystem working together. And I'll give you a small example. Getting your income tax identification number is now taking less than 4 minutes. So basically, you have an income tax ID delivered to your doorstep in the next 3 to 4 days. Now, all of this is happening at the back of these 3 big pieces coming together. And essentially, the rail that holds them together isn't one that is necessarily owned by private enterprises. It's owned by the government, which is called a public infrastructure for good. So Noreen has highlighted digital onboarding. She's highlighted the unbanked and the underserved. The question really becomes, even when you provide, first of all, access needs to be provided. Second, access needs to be enabled by enough regulatory drive so that banking and other financial institutions support. And third, which is probably the most important, is fintechs working together with different operators to really solve niche problems. I actually think that what fintech has done in India is a playbook for what can happen if public and private work together. Instead of fighting with each other and behaving as competitors, India is probably one of the markets in which the fintechs and the Indian government, and I would say even the banks, actually work together. And if one of them doesn't operate the way it's expected, each one of them stands up for this particular ecosystem, which is why Indian consumers are winning. And last, I'd like to highlight that there is a Make in India product called UPI. It looks like a Make in India product, but I must admit that but because I'm a payment professional myself, obviously one has to go a little bit behind and understand that technology and innovation happened many years ago, like in the UK with faster payments. But India made it possible with a public infrastructure to make it available for people who really do deserve these services and did not want to pay for it. So now the next step in India, just like in Pakistan and in South Asia, is to make sure that our mobile payments population is able to go beyond the top layer, which is literally the top of the pyramid, from 100 million users, and we're trying to go into 500 million users.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. You rightly so pointed out that it's a very regulated and structured market, and building in that market is very challenging. So with that, I would want to move on to Nagapan. If you can comment about, with your product manager experience, like building product in such a regulated and structured market, how challenging is that, and how do you ensure to, like, the market that we are serving is not very literate? So how do you build products that can serve that market, and what are some of their challenges?
So I started my product management career in Middle East, actually, Kuwait, after my master's. But when I went there, Indian ecosystem, payment ecosystem was not that great. So UPI, as Monica pointed, UPI was a game changer. Like I went for a year to Middle East, I came back and I saw like everyone was having mobile, and even my like people working like blue collar workers, everyone was able to do payments. So UPI was a game changer. And again, initially banks were not adopting to it. Like banks, UPI came 2 years back, then banks were not doing it. Then what did government do is, like the previous company which I worked in was JustPay. Like they came, they did partnership with JustPay. Nandan Nilekani himself drove the project. And in 3 weeks, they built a government app called Beam. So government was like, banks, if you don't adopt it, I'll make you adopt it. Like, because it's going to do something good for the customers. So always it was customer centric. So with UPI, what happened was, like, one important thing among the customers, trust was built. Like initially customers were, for example, first when you give cards, right? Like they did not believe that, okay, if someone can steal my card, they can go and pay on my behalf. And next one is, then other than trust, convenience. Like then net banking came into picture, and net banking, you would have to remember your username, password, multiple things. So one side customer experience was built better, and another side, as Naureen pointed out, correct, digital onboarding. So previously what has to happen is, you have to open a bank account, or you would have to get a credit card, debit card, you have to go to the bank, give your documents, give a hard copy, sign on it and get it. Then what happened was, like people started doing digital onboarding where you can upload your documents. And even after that, what happened was the TAT of onboarding a customer was high, because even if you do digital onboarding, the verification happens manually. Then another step, what happened was, like again the government databases, like PAN is our income tax number, like Monica said, Aadhaar is our social identity number. Everyone built out databases and API products, so where companies, startups like us can connect to the database and verify the documents. So step by step only we have also grown, and I have worked a lot in digital onboarding, because like 2 years back, before COVID, most of the companies were doing manual onboarding, and once COVID came in, like we did not have any option. Then we started investing in digital onboarding. And so even in B2B companies, right, if you are going to onboard a business, also multiple documents you have to collect, because again, the market in itself is very tech savvy. So if you don't onboard customers correctly, then a lot of frauds can happen. Like people can easily eat your system, and then they can take money out of you. To give one a very interesting example, like what we did was, from Razorpay, we are a B2B company, so we did a digital onboarding. So we would have to collect bank accounts of the merchants, that businesses, so that once they collect money from the end customer, we would have to settle back the money to them. So we would have to verify, is it the correct bank account? So what we did was, we did a penny drop. We dropped a penny into the account. In response, bank will give us the name of the account holder. So we were verifying it. So how did people game the system? People started creating multiple accounts and started dropping penny into their account. So there was one fraudulent activity happening, but we found out as soon as like in an hour or two. But again, if with digital onboarding, you are increasing the customer experience. At the same time, you would have to make sure that you are putting risk checks in place. So our risk check was, like, from the same IP, 40 calls were coming in the same time. So we identified, and then within 40 rupees loss, we were able to identify. If we had not put this check right, they would have been eating our APIs throughout, and they would have been getting money in their accounts. It's 1 rupee, but if they eat like 1 lakh times, it's 1 lakh rupees. So so again, increasing customer experience comes at the cost of making sure that you build the risk checks. So that is how we have also been growing. But the last 2-3 years has been tremendous growth in terms of like onboarding and building trust among the customers. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And I totally agree. Like building fintech products is one part, but nowadays we see that a lot of other like edtech products, e-commerce products are launching their fintech arms, right? So I think Monis and Haseeb can relate on this because Finja, the Dukaan provides credit line through Finja, and the Sagir is also launching their buy now, pay later solutions. So all of these other industries are launching their fintech arms. So I would like to take up with, I think Monis first. What do you think from the e-commerce perspective? What is like the future like in these kind of domains? And when you're serving the markets, like the retailers who are not very literate, so what are some of the challenges in educating them, or mainly, I would say, documenting the undocumented credit line processes? So how are you computing those lines, and how are you revolutionizing and digitizing these processes?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to say that it's just a very exciting time to be here now in Pakistan. I've been here since 2003. I'm a dinosaur. The first VC investment round was raised by us on my jobs platform with Rosie ages ago. It was very hard to raise. But last year alone during COVID, 28 startups raised VC funding. This year, it's going to be close to 50. $250 million US has been invested into startups just this year, and the year's not over. This is big for Pakistan. These are huge changes that we're starting to see in the startup ecosystem. A lot of great innovation is happening. I remember 4 years ago, we launched the first smartphone wallet called SimSim. At that time, JazzCash and EasyPesa were still on USSD. There wasn't even a license for a fintech. So we did a partnership with a bank. We became a super agent and we launched a wallet, and we broke all the rules, and we worked with State Bank and the regulator. We created these rails for onboarding with Nadra integration, and a very exciting time. And now those rails are being used by others, and others have now innovated on top of that. Since then, State Bank has launched licenses for organizations like ours, like an EMI license was launched. We were the first one on the Finja side to have an EMI. So the regulator is moving at lightning speed, which is just so encouraging to see. At the same time, startups are starting to work with each other, which we never saw. There was a competitive atmosphere. Oh, I've got a startup, you've got a startup. We're in the financial space. We don't talk to each other. Now all of us are working with each other. Like with Haseeb on the Finja side, we help them on the loan book because we know how to score their merchants, and we're helping with the loans that they're giving to their buyers. The most exciting opportunity that I want to highlight in response to your question is basically this opportunity of reaching this unbanked and a population that we previously considered unreachable. And that wasn't exciting. We always went for the top of the pyramid, the highly educated people that at that time had smartphones, and we were excited about it, a small percentage of the population. In Pakistan now, we have about 110 million smartphone users. 5 years ago, that was about 50 million. So we've added about 60 million smartphone users in the last 5 years. And who are there? They're not the kind of people on this panel. They're my cook, they're my plumber, there's a guy on the street, and they're all starting to get active on their smartphones, but we haven't built anything for them. We still have our nice English interfaces. We launched an experiment called rosegar.pk, which is an extension of my jobs platform for blue collar. In our pilot phase, we've gotten 60,000 workers who are barely educated, maybe up to grade 5 at maximum, self-onboard through a smartphone, through video interfaces, through voice interfaces. We've got voice prompts, and they're using it. So we've discovered how to reach these people that we previously thought were unreachable. And that's been phenomenal. And if you look at the growth on the wallet side, and most of the financial inclusion is coming from the wallets, by the way, not the banks. And that growth is coming from this group of people that previously never were on the internet. They never owned a laptop. Their first experience is on their smartphones. And they are adopting payments, and it's solving more instrumentable problems than it is for us. You know, we can still drive around and hand each other cash. They can't go to a village. So on Dukaan now, the target for Dukaan was to get the MSMEs, the really small entrepreneurs on the street that you see, a guy who runs a retail shop, or maybe a stall, or a woman at home who makes her cakes. It's been 4 months. We've clocked about 110,000 shops on this platform. And as we clock these shops, these aren't filers. These aren't organizations who are incorporated. They're barely educated, but they're using a simple interface that we've learned that they can use because they are on other platforms like WhatsApp, and they speak to each other through this platform, the voice notes. As they start to sell these small goods, and we've integrated the last mile for them, we've integrated the payments, all they have to do is upload their products and sell. As they start to sell, we get information on how they're doing in sales. We've got the KYC information because we do an ID card check through these rails that we've already created. And now these people have a credit history without having to incorporate and become a filer, and we can score them. And then from Finja, we take that data and we drop the money into a wallet created on the Dukaan app, which is partnered with a fintech to create a wallet. So this ecosystem is growing very quickly. The regulators are moving as fast as they can, but despite any holes, which are quickly being identified, fintechs and startups like ours are finding ways to work around that. And that's the most exciting thing, that we now have a tool to make a dent with a population that has largely been ignored by the banks and by us. So super exciting times.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of follow-up questions on that, but I think I'll give Haseeb the time to first comment on what he thinks is moving forward, because he's into the same domain and you're partnering with Finja as well, targeting Kirana, small stores. How's the acceptability like of these digital solutions, and what do you think is the innovation possibilities in this space?
First of all, thanks a lot for having me here. So many amazing people from both sides of the border doing great things. Like Monas rightly mentioned, we're seeing a great change happening in this time. Adoption is rising, mobile phone, internet, smartphone penetration is on the rise. What we're beginning to realize is that digitizing the offline segments of economic activity is now really critical to uplift South Asia. And people who have so long lacked access to opportunity, they've been stuck in a cycle that's perpetuated by, amongst other reasons, lack of choice, transparency with respect to using these products, inclusiveness, and ultimately they cost their participation to the economy. You see, we must, to enable these people and to empower them, we must allow them and you must enable them to create and grow economic value, and also at least capture a fair share of that to be able to get out of that cycle that they've been in. Must have the capability and stability to support the next generation to step out of this cycle by enabling them with having access to education and healthcare. And obviously, these kind of this strata of population is obviously very, very vulnerable and exposed to accidental and unforeseen financial shocks. Particularly in times of COVID, we've seen how many livelihoods have been impacted. Companies like B2B companies bringing these offline segments into the online net and partnering up with great fintech startups like Finja itself, by doing these kind of partnerships, we are allowing these people to step into this net and get an experience and a fair share of the opportunity that is available to the rest of the population. And there are so many ways to go about this. And something as simple as a buy now, pay later option to these Kirana stores is barely scratching the surface. This opens up the opportunity to enable them to provide access to insurance services, health services, perhaps getting some education fund for the children. There's many directions you can head on to, but it's really exciting to see, particularly the aspect that these new startups are all coming together and they're collaborating and they're working together to solve these problems. I think that signals a great future for Pakistan and some great footsteps to follow from across the border as well.
Perfect. I think fintech is a topic that we can talk lots on, and I think the audience is also really active. We're getting a lot of questions in the chat. I'm really sorry I won't be able to address all of the questions, but one thing that's very repetitive in all of the questions is about financial literacy. And I think this is something that's very common across, I think, both India and Pakistan. The socioeconomic factors are the same. The kind of people we are targeting, the literacy level, and all of those things are the same. So I think I'll just open it up to the panel who wants to take it forward. How do you ensure financial literacy with the fintech products? Because as Monas rightly pointed out, we're still building English products with English interfaces and targeting the top tier of the pyramid. So how are you ensuring that we are literating all of these people who are underbanked, underserved, through the financial products that we are building.
May I just interject really fast as we're going to open up, I think,
Sure.
extremely interesting ideas here. We've seen that the interfaces have already been cracked on how to reach these individuals. My driver is very active on his WhatsApp, as is my plumber. So the WhatsApp interface through voice has worked very well. They're on Facebook. They know how to upload images. So the interface issue has been solved. Now, in terms of educating them and smartphone access, all of these are great points. But the reality is, if we build use cases that allow them to earn income, they are going to learn how to use them. You can look at the story of Uber drivers here in Pakistan. They learned how to use smartphones. They learned how to buy a charger and to have it on their cars. So if we build them opportunities to make income, to grow their livelihoods, I guarantee you our people are super enterprising, and you won't have to spend a lot of time educating them. Of course, we should. It will accelerate this, but making easy interfaces and making compelling use cases will solve this problem.
I think that's a very good hack that you have pointed out. I'll still open it up to the panel to take on, maybe from the India side, how financial literacy, in particular, like from the finance perspective, how financial literacy is being catered.
I'd like to chime in on this one. There are two learnings that we have both from India and from Africa. Since Monish mentioned about the mobile wallet solution, I think one thing that we've learned very quickly is that in Africa, the assisted recharge model and the assisted mobile money model has worked for decades. But the question really is, when we're trying to handhold a person who does not have any access, does not have any literacy quotient to attach to, maybe it is better to actually have trusted sources and trusted access points. And this is where telcos, mobile wallets actually come in, because they are the cheapest, at the same time, the most easily available solutions out there to help the excluded understand what digital money feels like. Now, if I may speak for everyone in this segment here, I'm sure you've heard this many times. I have money in my hand. How do I get it into my phone? Now, this may seem really normal for all of us who are using smartphones, but it's not that for them. And secondly, I would say that, again, the ecosystem at large needs to play the biggest role possible. I'll go back to the card networks, because I do have a background there. But the whole idea of a two-factor authentication, of what it is to actually use your card, to get money out, to be able to do a card swipe, rested with the banks and the associations coming together. The whole ecosystem needs to understand that you're working with customers, but the literacy program is not a single for all. It is something that needs to apply uniformly across, and everyone needs to work together, because your customer is eventually my customer, and we all have to grow the pie together. If we keep fighting amongst each other, it's not going to work. And that's where I feel that the government needs to play the biggest role possible, and also need to allocate both funds as well as directions to fintechs, to, for example, like you have CSR budgets, there should be budgets just for financial literacy. Otherwise, we're never going to get our population out of this hole that we have right now.
I think you have rightly pointed out, we definitely need to collaborate moving forward. And I think it was a very, very inspiring session for me. I have a lot to go back and search on, because fintech is a space that's growing rapidly and there's a lot to learn. And with the Indian perspective on board, I think it was very valuable for me, and I'm sure our audience also got a lot of value out of this. Thank you again so much for all of you to join us, taking out time on a Sunday for us here today. With this, we're reaching at the end of this panel discussion.